Section 1 of Confessions, volumes 5 and 6. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Martin Geeson. Confessions, volumes 5 and 6, by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Anonymously translated. Section 1. Volume 5. It was, I believe, in 1732 that I arrived at Chambéry, as already related, and began my employment of registering land for the king. I was almost 21, my mind well enough formed for my age with respect to sense, but very deficient in point of judgment, and needing every instruction from those into whose hands I fell, to make me conduct myself with propriety. For a few years' experience had not been able to cure me radically of my romantic ideas. And notwithstanding the ills I had sustained, I knew as little of the world or mankind as if I had never purchased instruction. I slept at home, that is, at the house of Madame de Warrens, but it was not as at Annecy. Here were no gardens, no brook, no landscape. The house was dark and dismal, and my apartment the most gloomy of the whole. The prospect, a dead wall, an alley instead of a street, confined air, bad light, small rooms, iron bars, rats, and a rotten floor. An assemblage of circumstances that do not constitute a very agreeable habitation. But I was in the same house with my best friend, incessantly near her, at my desk or in her chamber, so that I could not perceive the gloominess of my own, or have time to think of it. It may appear whimsical that she should reside at Chambéry on purpose to live in this disagreeable house, but it was a trait of contrivance which I ought not to pass over in silence. She had no great inclination for a journey to Turin, fearing that after the recent revolutions and the agitation in which the court yet was, she should not be very favorably received there. But her affairs seemed to demand her presence, as she feared being forgotten or ill treated, particularly as the Comte de Saint Laurent, Intendant General of the Finances, was not in her interest. He had an old house in Chambéry, ill built, and standing in so disagreeable a situation that it was always untenanted. She hired and settled in this house, a plan that succeeded much better than a journey to Turin would have done, for her pension was not suppressed, and the Comte de Saint Laurent was ever after one of her best friends. Her household was much on the old footing. Her faithful Claude Anet still remained with her. He was, as I have before mentioned, a peasant of Moutru, who in his childhood had gathered herbs in Jura for the purpose of making Swiss tea. She had taken him into her service for his knowledge of drugs, finding it convenient to have a herbalist among her domestics. Passionately fond of the study of plants, he became a real botanist, and had he not died young, might have acquired as much fame in that science as he deserved for being an honest man. Serious even to gravity, and older than myself, he was to me a kind of tutor, commanding respect, and preserving me from a number of follies, for I dared not forget myself before him. He commanded it likewise from his mistress, who knew his understanding, uprightness, and inviolable attachment to herself, and returned it. Claude Anet was of an uncommon temper. I never encountered a similar disposition. He was slow, deliberate, and circumspect in his conduct, cold in his manner, laconic and sententious in his discourse, yet of an impetuosity in his passions, which, though careful to conceal, preyed upon him inwardly, and urged him to the only folly he ever committed. That folly indeed was terrible, it was poisoning himself. This tragic scene passed soon after my arrival, and opened my eyes to the intimacy that subsisted between Claude Anet and his mistress; for had not the information come from her, I should never have suspected it. Yet surely, if attachment, fidelity, and zeal could merit such a recompense, it was due to him. And what further proves him worthy such a distinction, he never once abused her confidence. They seldom disputed, and their disagreements ever ended amicably. One indeed was not so fortunate. His mistress, in a passion, said something affronting, which not being able to digest, he consulted only with despair, and finding a bottle of laudanum at hand, drank it off, then went peaceably to bed, expecting to awake no more. Madame de Warrens herself was uneasy, agitated, wandering about the house, and happily, finding the phial empty, guessed the rest. Her screams, when flying to his assistance, alarmed me. She confessed all, implored my help, and was fortunate enough, after repeated efforts, to make him throw up the laudanum. Witness of this scene, I could not but wonder at my stupidity in never having suspected the connection. But Claude Anet was so discreet, that a more penetrating observer might have been deceived. Their reconciliation affected me, and added respect to the esteem I before felt for him. From this time I became in some measure his pupil, nor did I find myself the worse for his instruction. I could not learn without pain that she lived in greater intimacy with another than with myself. It was a situation I had not even thought of, but which was very natural, it hurt me to see another in possession of it. Nevertheless, instead of feeling any aversion to the person who had this advantage over me, I found the attachment I felt for her actually extend to him. I desired her happiness above all things, and since he was concerned in her plan of felicity, I was content he should be happy likewise. Meantime he perfectly entered into the views of his mistress, conceived a sincere friendship for me, and without affecting the authority his situation might have entitled him to, he naturally possessed that which his superior judgment gave him over mine. I dared do nothing he disapproved of, but he was sure to disapprove only what merited disapprobation. Thus we lived in an union which rendered us mutually happy, and which death alone could dissolve. One proof of the excellence of this amiable woman's character is that all those who loved her loved each other, even jealousy and rivalship submitting to the more powerful sentiment with which she inspired them; and I never saw any of those who surrounded her entertain the least ill will among themselves. Let the reader pause a moment on this encomium, and if he can recollect any other woman who deserves it, let him attach himself to her, if he would obtain happiness. From my arrival at Chambéry to my departure for Paris, 1741, included an interval of 8 or 9 years, during which time I have few adventures to relate, my life being as simple as it was agreeable. This uniformity was precisely what was most wanting to complete the formation of my character, which continual troubles had prevented from acquiring any degree of stability. It was during this pleasing interval that my unconnected, unfinished education gained consistence, and made me what I have unalterably remained amid the storms with which I have since been surrounded. The progress was slow, almost imperceptible, and attended by few memorable circumstances, yet it deserves to be followed and investigated. At first I was wholly occupied with my business. The constraint of a desk left little opportunity for other thoughts. The small portion of time I was at liberty was passed with my dear Madame de Warrens, and not having leisure to read, I felt no inclination for it. But when my business, by daily repetition, became familiar, and my mind was less occupied, study again became necessary, and as my desires were ever irritated by any difficulty that opposed the indulgence of them, might once more have become a passion, as at my master's, had not other inclinations interposed and diverted it. Though our occupation did not demand a very profound skill in arithmetic, it sometimes required enough to puzzle me. To conquer this difficulty, I purchased books which treated on that science, and learned well, for I now studied alone. Practical arithmetic extends further than is usually supposed, if you would attain exact precision. There are operations of extreme length, in which I have sometimes seen good geometricians lose themselves. Reflection, assisted by practice, gives clear ideas, and enables you to devise shorter methods. These inventions flatter our self complacency, while their exactitude satisfies our understanding, and renders a study pleasant, which is of itself heavy and unentertaining. At length I became so expert as not to be puzzled by any question that was solvable by arithmetical calculation, and even now, while everything I formerly knew fades daily on my memory, this acquirement in a great measure remains, through an interval of 30 years. A few days ago, in a journey I made to Davenport, being with my host at an arithmetical lesson given his children, I did, with pleasure and without errors, a most complicated work. While setting down my figures, methought I was still at Chambéry, still in my days of happiness. How far had I to look back for them? The colored plans of our geometricians had given me a taste for drawing. Accordingly I bought colors, and began by attempting flowers and landscapes. It was unfortunate that I had not talents for this art, for my inclination was much disposed to it, and while surrounded with crayons, pencils, and colors, I could have passed whole months without wishing to leave them. This amusement engaged me so much that they were obliged to force me from it, and thus it is with every inclination I give into. It continues to augment, till at length it becomes so powerful that I lose sight of everything except the favorite amusement. Years have not been able to cure me of that fault, nay, have not even diminished it, for while I am writing this, behold me, like an old dotard, infatuated with another, to me useless study, which I do not understand, and which even those who have devoted their youthful days to the acquisition of, are constrained to abandon at the age I am beginning with it. End of section 1. Recording by Martin Geeson in Haslemere, Surrey.